Welcome to April. It's been a few cloudy days, which has made it not feel like April, but at least today is sunny. So welcome to April. Maybe we're on the track to spring. Today we're gonna talk about grief and loss for our youth and how it impacts their role in a family. But before we hop into that, I would love to hear. So I just got back from a long trip. Mariah just got back from a long trip. Ellie is away, and I'm gonna go away again. So lots of plane rides, and I'm curious if you could sit next to any fictional character on a plane, who would you sit next to and why?
Movie character or cartoon character?
Any fictional, anyone.
Robert De Niro.
Okay.
Mel, Robert De Niro is a real person.
As any character he plays. It's fine. She could go.
Oh,
Yeah, as anybody he's been in a movie. That makes sense. Mel, we're going with it today.
I'm there for it. Would you make him do all his impersonations?
Absolutely. Meet the Fockers, Robert De Niro.
Go. That's actually fantastic. That's the dad in that movie. 10 out of 10. You would laugh the whole plane ride.
You would.
My answer is so lame, but I don't have the energy to think past what my initial gut reaction was. So please don't laugh or laugh because it's ridiculous. But my immediate reaction to that question, Mindy, was Harry Potter. That's it. That's where I landed. That was my answer. We're going with it.
I mean, I love that for you. Although I feel like you would be on the Hogwarts Express, and you would need to be on a train, not on a plane.
Listen, here was my thought process. Okay, the last plane ride I took was 14 and a half hours, and whew, it was a long, long, long flight. Worth it. I'd do it again. But my thought process was if Harry Potter was sitting next to me, we wouldn't have to be on a plane for 14 hours. Like we could, boom, boom, get there, call it a day. That was really my thought process.
I like that for you. I do.
I feel like I'm having a similar situation as Mariah, but mostly it's that I got stuck on here and I can't even think of any other fictional characters, which is that I got stuck on sitting in between Sam and Dean Winchester, which is fine. But I can't think of anybody else that even exists.
Good for you.
So mine's a little biased, a little weird. Which I mean, once I tell you who it is, it's gonna make so much sense in Britney's world. Okay, here we go. So in the live action movie for Lion King, the character's name is Nala, who is played by Beyonce. So hence why she's my character. So I can sit next to her. Okay.
Way to find the loophole.
I was gonna say she's gonna say Beyonce, but Beyonce's also real.
So there you go.
You could have said Sasha Fierce.
Oh my gosh.
Okay, mine is completely fictional, but I wanna sit next to Smurfette. I want to know how she lives in a village with all these men and just doesn't go crazy. Like I live in a household with two men and I go nuts. I want to know how she does it. Like they don't put the toilet seat down. They never see anything in the refrigerator. Like how? How does she do it? Sorry, Sam.
No, it's totally fine. The only thing I could think of is Stanley Tucci's character from the Devil Wears Prada.
I would sit next to Stanley Tucci and go anywhere.
Or him as Caesar Flickerman in the Hunger Games. Just saying. Also phenomenal. Excellent choice, Sam. Excellent choice.
Okay, I don't know if anyone has watched The White Lotus, like most recent season that everyone's like going crazy about, but I would sit next to like that entire family. If you've watched it, you know who I'm talking about, like the I don't remember their name, but they have like the 3 kids.
You're
And I
insane.
characters, like not the real actors, obviously, but the whole family.
You're not.
It would make for a wild plane ride, that's for sure. It would be very entertaining.
That's definitely the type of like seating arrangement where you're just like, do you hear that? Do you hear this?
Your 14 and a half hour plane ride would fly by, Mariah. Emma, you would never make it through one page in your book.
Oh, I'm too nosy. I would be having my jaw drop the entire play, I think.
Oh, all right. Well, thank you. That was fun. And transitioning, it is fun to think about some of these things. And it gets us into a place where we're not necessarily thinking about what's going on in our real world, in our life. And for the youth that we work with, these types of activities can be fun. Again, it gives them a chance to get out of what's really going on. And we know that inherently the youth in our homes in foster care, they experience loss. Being removed from your home is an inherent loss. And so regardless of the trauma that led up to that removal, there is at least one loss in every youth in foster care. And we know that this sense of loss and this grief increases at certain times of the year, birthdays, holidays, anniversaries, significant events like graduation and transition. And I'm sure we could add to that list. And we also need to be mindful that grief and loss, it's a roller coaster. It is not a neat process, even though it's identified as, if we use the Kubler-Ross model, as 5 stages, it really looks more like a toddler drawing. It's just this messy tangle of emotions, and that you can experience 2 of them at the same time or all 5 of them at the same time. And there's highs and lows. There's really no set time frame. And how it's experienced really depends on a variety of factors. And so where I thought we would start today is talking about some of those factors. What impacts how someone experiences grief and loss? And if it's not, if a certain case isn't coming to mind, if it's you, or if it's someone in your family or a friend, that's fine too. Just in general, what are some of the factors that impact how humans experience grief and loss? Hi, Brittany.
Hi, how are you? So I think that something that will impact them is the nature of the loss, like how they were lost. Like a lot of our children come into care. Sometimes it is due to somebody else making, a call for them to get them safe. Sometimes it's them having to speak up about the situation that made them feel uncomfortable. Sometimes it's a sibling. So our kids come into care through different scenarios, but I think depending on the scenario depends on how the grief and loss affects the child.
Yeah, I think, Brittany, that's a great point, right? If it's a youth themselves speaking up, in some ways there's this expectancy that there may be some fallout, or there may be some action, where if it's someone else that called it in and they don't know about it, that it could be really unexpected. Other thoughts?
Specifically for the kids that come into care, I think, and Brittany, you touched upon this slightly, but I think sometimes it also depends on, is it siblings and are they staying together? If they have that sibling with them who has experienced that grief and that loss, I think that tends to, they have somebody that gets it. They have somebody that understands. They have somebody that feels it. I think that tends to support the grieving process. Also speaking to what are the things that they're grieving? Are they still able to go to the same school, or are they having to switch schools? Are they still able to talk to bio parents or whomever their previous caregiver was? Those factors, I think, all play into how these youth are going to process and work through grief in that experience.
How many losses are there? And then, that support system around them. What about the coping skills that they're bringing to the table? Have you guys seen any of that play into it? Do they have the ability, or have they experienced previous losses? Have you seen that play into it?
I think kids who have kind of, I hate to say it this way, but who have kind of been there, done that, they're often a little more cynical from the beginning. And they're often a little bit more just like, oh, well, yep, we've done this before. So it's not that big of a deal. It's not that big of a loss. In reality, it still is. But for them, because it's happened before, it's sort of just this, oh, here we go again. It's not that serious.
It's an interesting word you use, cynical. Almost like there's this expectation of how it's gonna play out. Anyone else have any other thoughts around this? The factors. Yeah.
Sorry. Do you want to go, Brittany? Or? Okay. I think also this is more like relating to the first question you asked, but it depends on like the relationship that they have with the like person, or how the like feelings towards school and other activities and things like that. And I think it like depending on if they had a close relationship or not, it changes the way that they kind of grieve and process that.
I imagine that some view it as a significant loss, where others may be able to reframe it as a fresh start, right? That doesn't mean that it doesn't hurt, but there may be this other piece of okay, I can start over. Go ahead, Brittany.
I was just also going to say that it also depends on their culture. I figure that plays a huge part. We have a lot of families who are most of our Hispanic families try to go with other family. They try to find someone to go with them. But then we also find like mix and matching cultures, like foster parents or foster child also can be a loss. You're losing some of those traditions and foods and different things that you would eat and have, and that impacts the child as well. So like those little things that they all come into play at the end.
I really appreciate how you just brought up food, actually, because I think as a society, we all think of food as comfort and food as bonding, and food as a gathering type thing. And many of our families, when we call and we're talking about a child, whether it's a long-term placement or respite, or even just, can you help for if this is an emergency situation, can you help for just a little bit? One of the very first questions our foster parents ask, which I really do appreciate and speaks volumes, Brittany, to what you just said, is what's the child's favorite food? What do they eat? And when we look at that, it goes so much deeper than that surface level. It really does speak to trying to minimize that loss and give that child something that they're familiar with. And so I think sometimes we negate how important understanding those things are. Besides the fact that some of our foster parents are just amazing cooks, and I would love to just go to every different house for dinner every night of the week. Lauren, you're coming with me, aren't you?
There's definitely one or two homes that I know I would love to have dinner at.
So we've covered what contributes to the experience of the loss, but how do we see this manifest? What does it look like in our youth?
It's so different and I'm like going through all of the kids in my brain and how each of them responds, and each of them respond so differently, which I think is normal of, let's be honest, grief is a universal experience. It's not experienced the same, but we've all experienced it. And I think we all respond to it differently. But I think if I have to go through each of the kids and think through something consistently, I think it's definitely a sense when experiencing that grief and that loss, it's that push and pull of, why should I be excited about doing this? Or why can I be happy about doing this? But I wish I could talk to mom, or I wish I could talk to dad. I think I think that's one constant I've seen, is that push and pull around, how do we hold space for both? How is it okay to be both grieving a loss and be happy I'm safe, or happy I'm here, or happy I get to have this experience?
The two opposing emotions that can be true at the same time. And that's a hard concept for adults to understand sometimes.
I was gonna say that what Mariah was saying in regards to grief, that's true too. Every kid does react to grief differently. Some can be comedic, where they'll laugh about everything and everything is a joke to them. Sometimes you can see a lot of behaviors kind of play out, whether that be in school. Some, become withdrawn and stay to themselves. Some need extra love and support. So I think that it's important to kind of learn, weirdly, what the children's love language is. That makes sense. Just to see what it is that they feel help them when they need that extra love, that extra support. And sometimes that can come from grief. And maybe it can mean space, maybe it can mean touch, maybe it can mean hug, maybe it can mean food, but I think it's important to learn that everybody deals with that very different. Some people overload themselves with work. Some people, try to read a lot of books. Some people try to keep their mind occupied. So it's very important to know how people handle things, because a lot of, especially teenagers, handle things very differently.
Yeah, Melissa, you actually just led into my next question fantastically, so thank you. And I did want to spend some time talking about what can we do to help, right? When we recognize that there may be that push and pull, or that dueling emotions, or that this youth is struggling with a loss, even though yesterday was a super happy day for them. What are those things we can do? And you even touched on some of them now, right? Allowing them that space to do what's comfortable for them, even if it might not be the way that we would cope. That's one thing. But what are some other suggestions?
I always feel that it's best to talk to the child. A lot of our kids are teenagers. I always advise the foster parents to just talk to them, to ask them, what do you need? What it works best? Is there a safe word that we need to put in place when you need space and you need your own time? Or if, do you want me to hug you? Do you want me to touch you? I feel like having a conversation first can lead into what the child needs specifically.
Giving the child the voice. And Brittany, I like how you ask some specific questions. So it's sometimes the open-endedness can be overwhelming, but also putting some suggestions out there to give them their brain kind of to start working. Other thoughts?
Sometimes I think it's been helpful for piggybacking off of that exact thing, that notion of giving them examples. Sometimes I think it's helpful for foster parents to share what works for them and just say, hey, when I'm having a bad day, I like to go for a walk. Do you want to go for a walk with me? Hey, when I'm having a bad day, this is a TV show I watch. Do you want to sit and watch it with me? Or do you have a TV show you might want to watch? But I think just sort of that, sometimes for kids, I think it's just that, oh, you do kind of understand where I'm going through. You may not get it all, but you have had your own experience. And as you were saying, Mindy, it does then give them a solution, which may be difficult to kind of come up with on the fly in that moment because they are upset.
Yeah. And maybe even having, for not teens, maybe a little bit younger of the youth, like the the tweens, school age kids having, I used to call them stress relief boxes, just having a bag of activities that, you know, whether it's the coloring or the listening to music. I know we don't do CDs anymore, but like we would have the coloring boxes, the crayons and a coloring book and a CD in there, those types of things that are ready access, so that when the youth isn't able to verbalize, you could just hand them, you know, pass over the box or the bag that had the top 3 coping skills type thing, and they could pick from there when they couldn't verbalize. One of the things that I've always been conscious of in speaking with the youth is not saying, I know how you feel, or saying like, I know you're angry, or I know you're blank, trying to label their feeling. Just, I'm not gonna lie, I learned that the hard way. Um, you know, when I did tell a youth I was working with that I can tell or I see that you're angry. No, I'm not angry. F you. You don't know, right? So it's acknowledging that there's big feelings, acknowledging that there's something going on for them, but not labeling it for them, allowing them the space to label it. So that's something that I've worked on over the years in when I see something going on, is not labeling it, giving them the space to label it. Any other thoughts? So the last thing I want to talk about is we know that a lot of times this loss is surrounding being separated, whether it's from bio family, whether it's from school, you know, their friends, their school of origin, their siblings, their, you know, whatever it is. And so what are some things we can do to try and promote connection and positive feelings without crossing lines, without encouraging negative relationships, without violating court orders or anything of that nature, so that we can help the youth still feel connected in their loss?
I would say, I think Brittany says this to them, daily check-ins. Daily check-ins around their emotions, how they're feeling throughout the day. You know, their highs and lows, giving them the space to express themselves. I think that really works, without you crossing any boundaries or anything like that, just kind of giving them the opportunity to have their own voice in what it is that they're going through, on a daily basis.
I've also had some youth write letters to somebody who they can't be in contact with at the exact time. I do try to explain, I always do, you know, things you can control, things you can't control. And unfortunately for our kids in foster care, they don't have a lot of control over when they can talk to people and who they can talk to. So I find that, you know, kind of pen and paper or on your notes app on your phone if you don't want to, or a voice recording where you can record something or update someone who you can't actually talk to or see in the moment, that you can possibly give to them at a later date or not, whatever, however it goes, but to give the child the opportunity to express those emotions in the moment, writing them down, and then we can kind of process it through there, because it does hurt when, you know, the kids go to a different school and can't see their best friends or your favorite soccer coach or something of that nature. There are a lot of adults who these kids have in their lives who are important to them, not just their, you know, biological family. So I think that's always good too. And I think that helps them out.
I really like the idea of the using the note section on your phone, Brittany. I think that's a great idea. And that voice recording, because we know some of our youth writing is not not their thing. So that's a great alternative. Thank you for that suggestion. One of the things I always emphasize when I do trainings is making sure we're not speaking negatively about all of these other connections. Not saying, well, it's good you don't have contact with them anymore. They're a bad influence. And even if that's potentially the truth, it's still saying, it's saying that recognizing that was a loss and reframing it to, you're going to make positive connections here, or you're going to do this. So reframing that, I hear that you miss them, and we're going to help you here, kind of thing. Not putting out there that person was negative, or that person was a bad influence, or at least not right away, until that you have that better rapport. And because otherwise, I think that it really pushes that youth away. Any closing thoughts?
I would
Right.
say in regards to grief, that you can't tell people when to heal. I think that sometimes, I think that's very important. I've worked in settings where I've heard people say, but that person died 7 years ago, or, oh, but her mother's been gone a long time now. Like, or she moved a long time ago. You can't tell people how and when to heal. People heal at their own time. I think it's important, even with kids, there's going to be moments of sadness, even if it's 15 years ago, even if it happened when they were 3, and recollecting the issue, if they have to talk about it, there is going to be moments of sadness. So no matter how long it is, you can't tell people when to heal. So grief is a process that can last forever.
Yeah, thank you, Mel. I think that's a great note to end on, and that we all need to give each other and our youth and our families grace around grief, because you're right. Something can trigger it, and it can really bring it up, and the process can get really messy at all sorts of different points in our life. And so with that, giving everybody grace for today, and we'll see you next month.